newspaper, Facebook's holiday party. Excellence in education. This is Marta Perez, and our mission is to expose and inspire excellence in education. And before I introduce our very extremely important guest, please note that here at Community Newspaper, we use all safety precautions. We wear masks when we're not seated. We use hand sanitizers. Our temperatures are checked when we walk in. And then we have this wonderful plexiglass shield between speakers. Also, please follow us on Facebook and send questions to our chat room. And now, I am so very pleased to introduce one of the heroes of Miami-Dade County and the United States. He is Mitch Kaplan, a name synonymous with integrity, kindness, and books. And now books made into films and great bookstores. He is a wonderful role model for all of us in his many attributes, but particularly to our students. He has received countless national and international honors of the highest order, not only for his altruism, but also for creating the best book fair in the United States, the Miami Book Fair. Books, stores, author events, you name it, Mitch is there and fits so appropriately with the mission of this program, Excellence in Education. And in an incredible man, an incredible career, Mr. Mitch Kaplan. Welcome.
Oh, my. Thank you so much for such a generous introduction. I really...
You deserve that and more. I wasn't sure where to start in this interview, but I will tell you that everyone I know that I've said something about you, they have the nicest things to say about you.
So nice.
And I think that intellectual intelligence is very important, and that's what we deal with here in education. But emotional intelligence is so important, and you fit both academic intelligence and emotional intelligence, and I think that has helped to propel your career.
Well, I thank you so much. And, I can throw that right back at you because we've known each other for a number of years, and everything that I know about you is equally the same.
Well,
I mean, what you value is what I value, and that is education. I'm a product of the Miami-Dade public school system. I'm a huge advocate. I taught, before opening the bookshop, I taught high school English here in Dade County. So I am a supporter of all that you do, all that the district does, and I am just so happy to be here with you.
Thank you so much. Now, first of all, tell us about your first job.
Oh, that's a great question. You're not going to believe this, but it ties into where I went to high school. So I went to Miami Beach Senior High School, and in those days, a long time ago, they were experimenting with what they called the quinmester system. So it meant, I don't know if you remember that at all, but it meant that you could double up on classes. They were trying to treat high school a little like college. So I could take 2 English classes and all of that. And I actually graduated a little early from high school because I was able to get my English.
How old were you when you graduated?
I was 17, but I graduated instead of June, I graduated in March.
Okay.
And so my very first job in March was I worked construction at the Orange Bowl.
Oh.
And they were replacing the AstroTurf at the Orange Bowl.
Oh, my goodness.
And I was on the crew to rip up the old AstroTurf. So it was a little bit like being on the chain gang. I was like there scraping away the art, but I made, I think it was $2.99 an hour. And I felt like I was, in heaven doing that.
And where did you go from there in your job and education?
So my first job after college. So after Miami Beach High School, I went to University of Colorado, believe it or not. And there was actually there's a book in that story that got me out to the mountains. I had never I grew up in Miami Beach. I had never seen mountains. I had never seen snow.
Uh-huh.
So I thought I had read a book by Jack Kerouac actually called The Dharma Bums.
Uh-huh.
And in that book, there is a poet who lives on the top of a mountain writing poetry. And being a dreamy kid, who had all these fantasies about doing stuff that I didn't know what I was doing, I thought, living on the mountains might be a great thing. So in those days, I just got an application, went to University of Colorado, and I studied English there. And it just so happened that it was perfect for me to be there at the time. It was all serendipitously, because at the time, a lot of poets and a lot of writers were congregating in Colorado, in Boulder. And I was able to be a witness to all of these amazing writers who were living out there at that time.
So you thoroughly enjoyed. You didn't miss Miami when
I missed the ocean, I think. But, when you're 17, you're exploring the world. And in those days, and I try to tell it to my kids and younger people, when you're disconnected in those days. There was no internet. There was no cell phone. So you really felt like you were going out into the world on your own. And there was something very liberating about that at that time.
Yes.
And then after that, I came back to Earth and I went to law school for a couple of years. But
was that what did you set out? Was that when you left?
No, it was all done haphazardly, I think. I have to admit, I didn't really know what it was I wanted to do after. And back in those days, English majors were at a premium. There were in the University of Colorado, there were 5,000 English majors, and there were 200 business majors. It's all reversed now.
Yes.
And in those days, having an English degree, I didn't know what to do. So I kind of, like every other English major, I went to law school.
Law school.
But I pretty much, the one through line from being in college and law school, I went to law school in DC, was bookstores. I just always loved being in bookstores.
And when did you develop that passion for literature?
It started on Miami Beach, actually. And the passion for literature, here's an interesting thing, really started, I think, when I was in elementary school. At Central Beach Elementary School, when I was a kid there, which is now called Ida Fisher.
Yes.
Not Ida Fisher, it's called Feinberg.
Feinberg Fisher.
Feinberg was my principal. They had something called a library patrol instead of the safety patrol.
Uh-huh.
And I got put in the library patrol. I think it's because maybe I wasn't reading as much as I should have. And they invited me into the library patrol, and every week you would go to the library and help the librarian out.
Uh-huh.
And I found myself reading sports biographies and all of that. But it was the first time I really discovered the power of what books could do. And then I was fortunate to have amazing teachers in middle school, in high school, who were just my favorite teachers were always the English teachers.
You said the power of what books can do. What is that power? I mean, what is that power that we must insist that our students get?
Well, I think, there's a couple of things that I've learned over the 40 years of being teacher, a bookseller, and that is that the one thing that readers have that non-readers have a hard time dealing with, they have to struggle to get, and that is a sense of, you talked about emotional IQ, a sense of being able to put themselves into someone else's shoes.
Empathy.
And when you read fiction particularly, and you're reading about other cultures and other lives, you become very empathetic. And empathy is something that we've lost a lot in this country.
Oh, yes, sir.
And reading is a way to make people empathetic. It opens you up to other cultures. Just if you look at the reading lists in the high schools in terms of whether it's Sandra Cisneros or whether it's James Baldwin, you're discovering new cultures. If you're not a Latino, if you're not Black, if you happen to be a white Anglo, you're beginning to understand what maybe other cultures are like. And we need to understand that more.
But Mitch, I don't know the statistics, but people are reading less, and you're the expert. You tell us.
Well, I'm not a very good sounding board for that, because all I do is see readers, in that sense. But there have been studies to say that people are reading less. But one of the studies that has always interested me was a few years ago, the NEA did a study of readers. And the study was really interesting. It was that if you read just one piece of fiction every year, you became more civically engaged than people who don't. And so there was this trend to reaffirm the idea that reading is a way of bringing our country together and making people more civically engaged.
Absolutely, I agree. But I'm very concerned that in this day and age where people's attention spans are so much smaller, we're all used to getting whatever, reading off of our telephones. How do you see that as going forward? How do you see that as a bookseller? And are books becoming smaller? Are they becoming shorter? Are we fitting into the customer with?
I'm more hopeful. I'm kind of hopeful. I mean, this year with the pandemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
This year, publishers have had their greatest year just about ever.
Really? That's good to hear.
People were reading at home.
Good.
People found themselves at home and they started reading more and more and more. And young people, I think, are beginning to understand to some extent that being hooked into, the online world has some precariousness to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I do find a lot of younger people moving back into reading. Young adult books are huge right now.
Really?
Huge.
Yes.
We had an event a couple of nights ago with two Miami-based or South Florida-based sisters who are both Haitian American.
Uh-huh.
And they're the Mulit sisters, and they write their novels together.
Oh.
And their books are well known all across the country.
Uh-huh.
And they would be very good guests, actually.
Oh, great.
And they speak to middle schoolers, young high school students.
Yes.
And they have a very large readership. But I do think that there is a responsibility of the schools, of teachers, of parents, to make sure that books and authors and writers are introduced into the school system in ways that are not the traditional ways.
Yes.
So one of the things that we've tried to do as a bookstore is whenever we have a young adult author coming to the store, or even a children's author, we try to partner with one of your schools.
Great.
And bring them into the schools
Wonderful.
As well. So if a kid could see a real live person who is connected with the book, it becomes a little more exciting.
Now, a lot of people they read from tablets and they find it very comforting. Other people, they don't like that experience. What have you found?
Well, I can't read on tablets. It feels too much like I'm at work, But and actually what's been happening, which is for me kind of cool, is that the whole ebook world went up for a while, but it's falling back again. And you are finding a rise in audiobooks.
Audiobooks, yes.
Audiobooks are taking off.
Yes.
I think it's because earphones are better and people are exercising and they listen to books, or they're taking a long drive, or they're commuting, and that sort of thing. So audiobooks have been on the rise. Ebooks have been flat or a little bit down. And the print book is alive and well, believe it or not.
Well, there have been some studies that print books are better for young children, for retention, that they'll remember things more if they see it on a physical page and other things. But at the school district, we try to get them any way we
and as you
any we can.
As you should.
So what I know that you have very exciting things on the horizon, which are your movies, the movies that you're producing.
So about 10 years ago, I've always loved movies, and that's another way to excite kids about books, because so many books are made into film. So I've always played that game, this would make a great, great movie. And finally, I found a book that I thought would make a great movie. And I said, I'm going to make a movie like the old Mickey Rooney films.
And what was that
Well, the first
and
one,
why?
the first one was called the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society,
Uh-huh.
which all of you can see on Netflix if you want. And it stars Lily James and everybody who was in Downton Abbey. It's very, very British. But it's about the island of Guernsey during World War II. Guernsey and Jersey in the Channel Islands were the only islands that the Nazis actually occupied. And the way in this book, the way these people get through is by forming a book club. And so what appealed to me was it was about books, it was about historical sweep, and it had all of those elements that I love in film. So my partner and so I didn't know what to do. So I was introduced to my partner who lives in LA, who's actually a producer, because I wouldn't know what to do. So early on I learned that the only way you can do anything is by finding people who know what they're doing. So I partnered with her, and it took us about 8 or 9 years, but we had it made. It came out about 2 years ago, has done really, really well. It's still favored on Netflix. But since then, we've done 3 other films. We did a film called The Man Who Invented Christmas, again about books. It's about Charles Dickens and the writing of A Christmas Carol. In fact, some of your schools, I did a Zoom event with Carver Middle, who showed the film, and
great.
then had me come in and talk a little bit about it
that's
as well.
fabulous.
And they showed Guernsey, I think, as well. And then we did another one, which was about a YA book, about 2 kids in school who are having a very hard time psychologically. And it starred Elle Fanning. It was called All the Bright Places. And just 2 months ago, we had a book come out called Let Him Go, a film come out starring Diane Lane and Kevin Costner. And that's done really, really well. But during the pandemic, it's very complicated. So we formed a company. It's called the Mitchell Kaplan Company. We have a website. You can go on and find out what we're doing. And we have about 8 or 9 projects. Actually, we had a meeting yesterday. We have 16 projects in the works right now.
You are always
we're very excited about
coming up with very exciting things to do. As I said, and there's so many questions I want to ask you, but the essence of Mitch Kaplan, I think everyone I've ever spoken to about you, they've said, what a great guy you are, and I want to hear from you.
I'm going to play this for my kids too.
Well, no, how
they can see
how important you think that is and has been in your life, because there is capital, I think, in being a nice person. Obviously, capital, we think of money, but so often the fact that you're just a very nice person is synonymous almost with money.
Well, I think what happened with me is, I have a temper as well, like everybody else, but I also understand, and I was raised by my parents to really be empathetic to other people. I try to.
Are you an only child?
No, I'm the oldest, but I have 3 young. All of them went through the public school system. I have 2 sisters and a brother who are all accomplished, doing a whole bunch of different things. But we were always taught to be very empathetic. My dad was a lawyer. He actually worked for. He was a union lawyer, so he worked for people who were, the worker and that sort of thing. And he was a workers' comp lawyer. And my mother was always a reader and always very interested in what was happening in the world. So all of us grew up with this idea that we had to serve others in whatever capacity that we had to be able to do that.
So are all your siblings as empathetic and altruistic as you are?
Great. We're all very, very close.
Okay, good. But I also think that it's of course it's taught to us by our parents, and we are also I think part of it is Jeanette. I don't know.
Well, no, I think I have to be honest. I think that we have to work hard at making sure that we keep some of the, uglier parts of human nature at bay, one way or another.
Yes.
We saw yesterday, unfortunately, a horrible example
Yes.
of what happens when we don't pay attention to the truth. And truth, whether good or bad, we have to have a shared common idea of morality and truth and what it might be. We can disagree on various things
Yes.
in a very in an important way, but we can't allow ourselves to be manipulated into living in an alternate universe. And truth, to me, if there's one thing that I distill out of everything, is that when I read, when I talk to other people, I am always looking for something that will unite us. And typically what unites us is our commonality based on understanding the facts that we can agree on.
Yes.
Not the things we don't agree on, but the things that we do agree on.
Right.
And I think that if we can teach that in schools, if we, the school system has a huge job ahead of them because of the complicated nature of
Yes.
media. When I was a kid, you watched Walter Cronkite for the truth.
Yes.
Now you have to teach people, how to filter out certain things, and how not to jump on a bandwagon that might be harmful to various people.
Yes. And at the same time, teaching students, math and reading and all of those things.
No.
At the same time, the world is having all of these events that are so visible to everyone, to our students. I mean, they obviously they are filters. They're listening, whether we think that they are understanding or not, but they are certainly hearing adults and what we're up to.
I think I always say that my job is to create the next generation of readers. And I imagine your job as an educator is to create the next generation of learners and people who will spend their whole life wanting to learn.
Yes.
And how to learn.
Yes.
And how one finds out information.
Yes.
Those are skills that don't come easily.
No. And this year has been a tough year for all of us, I think.
What teachers have done, I have such empathy. I see teachers all the time and educators who come into the store, and the kinds of things that people have had to go through this year and the commitment that they've had to their students is just amazing. And the other thing that I think is really important is that I think parents who've had to be at home with their kids during this time, particularly younger kids, are understanding what teachers have had to go through.
Absolutely.
And I think you're going to find parents much more empathetic
to teachers,
to the plight of teachers.
Yes.
And how important it is.
And no matter what is happening in the world, our kids are growing. If a child is in first grade and he doesn't get what he needs in the first grade, next year he's 1 year older. And to keep in mind that we are charged with, giving the skills and propelling this child in this world of so many different things that have happened that were not conducive to education this year, was particularly tough. And our teachers, as you say, are wonderful. But I have so many questions, but our time is almost up. But I don't want to go without asking you, who has taught you the most in life, or what event or what person has taught you the most in life, and how has that affected your extremely important and a wonderful career?
Well, that's really a very good question. I mean, I've been very fortunate to have mentors in my life in different aspects of my life. When I taught for a little while, there were some amazing teachers I looked to who helped me. When I became a bookseller, there were people that I looked toward and learned from. But I think at root, when I really look at it as a young person, as a kid going through school, I have to say my parents are the ones that, and particularly watching my father at work and watching him do what he did his whole life, it gave me, and he was passionate about the law. He unfortunately died about a year ago, but But knowing that someone could be passionate about what they do taught me that I needed to find something in my life I was passionate about. And so where your work is also, your work is what you love to do anyway, where your work is not really your work, that's what taught me something very important. And then also a sense of social justice, the idea that we need to have a sense of social justice, that we're only as strong as the weakest among us. That really is a kind of underpinning of everything I do. I'm very committed to making sure that that everyone from students in Title I schools to people who are having a hard time finding work, all of those things are really, really important, and we can't forget that. We can't forget that if we don't take care of the least fortunate among us, then our society suffers from that.
It's interesting because my last guest was the superintendent, and I asked him the same question, who has taught you the most? And his answer was the same as yours. Basically, my parents, but my father. And I think the importance of fathers, we of course are our mothers, but our fathers are so important. And I just wish that there would be avenues for us to be able to connect with all fathers, and that all children would have that kind of relationship, because obviously it's so important to create successful men and women.
Most definitely. I agree. And mentorship programs can help, I think, as well.
As well, yes.
And I think that's
we try.
No, you guys, I know that we're running out of time, but
no, go ahead.
I think the work that you're doing at the school system, I've always been extremely proud of the Miami-Dade public school system and what it's been able to do and the challenges it's faced. One of the films that we're doing, there's a new book out called The Year of Dangerous Days. It's about Miami in 1980. And in 1980, Miami was really having a rough time. It's when Mariel happened. It's when the McDuffie riots happened. It's when the cocaine cowboys were beginning. And the fact that the school system really had so much, the resiliency of the school system and the way it pivoted and was able to absorb all of these issues and come out to be one of the strongest school systems, in the nation is really kind of remarkable when you think about it.
So before we end, what is the future for Mitch Kaplan?
Well, I love what I do, and I want the legacy of Books and Books to continue. And I think the work that we do is extremely important.
Absolutely.
I think retail is really hard right now. Bookstores are really struggling. We're making it through because our community is supporting us. But I'm going to be very, I have to find creative ways of making sure that the legacy of what we have and the important work that we do absolutely continues.
Well, your bookstores, the cafes, the ambience that you've been able to create, and the authors that you're so kind to authors. I think that speaks so well and keeps the customers coming in. I mean, I go to Books and Books for coffee all the time on the weekends,
and what was so great is that people bought from us online. And the book fair went online this year.
The book fair.
What they do at Miami-Dade College is just so incredible.
And are you planning to be able to reopen
We hope that the book fair will be physical this year. Hopefully we'll have enough inoculations. The book fair doesn't happen until November. And the new president of the college is very supportive of the fair.
Good.
She's a person who was very much involved in the fair when she was both a student as well as a teacher at Miami-Dade College.
How proud are you that this is the best book fair in the United States?
It brings me great satisfaction.
Oh my goodness! Oh, it's such an honor. You're really you.
For a while, I was on the Silver Knights committee in the English, judging the English Silver Knights, and it used to be such a kick to have these English students come and say, "Well, I developed my love of reading at the book fair." These are kids who were in high school, but they were brought to the book fair when they were young kids. So I'm, it's going to be almost 37 book fairs that we've had. Isn't that
Really,
kind of
it
amazing?
seems like it was
I know, it's like a
yesterday.
blink, a
And the
blink.
authors that you bring and the interest, and people are so happy. And, you walk around and then you go see the authors, and everyone is so excited. You have created.
Isn't it cool though? Also, there how it's a big tent under which all of Miami comes.
Yes.
The diversity of Miami is seen
Yes,
there,
sir.
and you
You
see it.
you are a magician.
Well, it's
Well,
not just me; it's a whole team of people. I know
yes,
I'm visible, but what they do at the college and the way they throw themselves into it,
but
it's a gift.
you are the visionary, and we are so grateful. This community is so grateful to have you, and thank you, and continued
Well,
success.
thank you.
And I wish we could have more time to hear you, because
Well, we'll do it over lunch at the bookstore in the
oh,
courtyard.
okay,
We
very
can
good.
socially distance.
All
It's
right.
outside,
No, and it's fabulous, and there's social distancing, and the service is fabulous.
and we'll be able to. We'll just talk.
All right. Thank you so
All
much,
right.
Mitch.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for
so
having
much.
me.
Thank you. And thank you for listening to this fabulous interview with Mitch Kaplan on this community newspaper Facebook party.